cryptocurrencies. So,
well, welcome everybody.
Talk about CBDC.
It's great to be here in Abu Dhabi.
Talk about what's the future of money is. But
this is really exciting. CZ is kind of the king of crypto these days, and
no, we're not a king. We're just a servant.
And it's the first time I've actually met him in person. I met him a few years ago on Zoom, but I've watched him in awe build one of the great companies in the space. So we're going to have a pretty simple conversation. The big elephant in the room is what the heck's happening in crypto. We had, one of the big competitors go up in flames. And, I teased CZ. I said, you threw a cigarette on a house that we thought was made of bricks, and it turned to be made out of kerosene. And so in the space, we've had a real breakdown in trust, which is ironic because crypto was set up to go after that issue. And so, CZ, let me ask you the first question. What are you going to do as Binance to assure people that your exchange is safe? And then second, what does the whole crypto community need to do to start rebuilding trust?
Sure. Mike, thanks for the question. And it's great to be here with all of you guys. And so I think given what happened in the last week or so, first of all, I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke cigarettes. and it's just not very good for the industry. It's not good for anybody. A lot of consumer investors are hurt. The confidence in the industry is shaken. And going forward, we're going to face a lot more challenges. Regulators are going to scrutinize this industry a lot more. But that's actually might not be a bad thing. In order to rebuild confidence or trust, as you mentioned, we are supposed to be in a trustless industry where the technology is supposed to just remove the dependency on trust. But today, the industry is still so early that most users still use centralized platforms because most people are still more comfortable with a username and a password. So as Binance.com was one of the largest centralized platforms. We need to do a number of things. I think for the industry players, we need to be more transparent. So anything that can improve transparency, proof of reserves, disclosing our hard wallet and cold wallet addresses, be more transparent with our processes, stronger governance. So I think there's a transparency aspect of it. There are technologies that will help us to do that, like proof of reserves, Merkle trees, et cetera. There's regulations, working closely with regulators, working closely with auditors. And so that's one aspect of it. There is for the consumers, there's a very strong education piece to it. We need to educate people on financial literacy, on how to not chase super high yields, not be able to differentiate what's a good behavior or what's a bad behavior. So, so there's quite a lot of stuff that we need to do. But yes, some of them will rely on technology, regulations, and also education. That's probably a lot more. Yeah.
Right. It makes sense that in the centralized companies that deal with crypto, the regulation should probably look similar to the regulation in centralized TradeFi companies. And you're right, it's transparency, transparency, and transparency. What's been frustrating in the US is it's been very difficult to get the regulators in the US to allow companies to become public, to set clear rules. And so, you're in this mixed zone. But that has to happen quick. I actually don't think we've seen the worst of it yet. I think we might have seen the worst of it in price. If you had to sell, you probably have sold. But not in terms of the damage done to other key players in the industry. And I think it's going to take a few weeks, if not months, for the hedge funds, other broker-dealers, other weaker players to actually show their cards on how much damage it has done. What does the industry do? How do we kind of grind through the next few months collectively? Is there anything that, players can do to support the broader industry? Because there's no lender of last resort, the central bank.
Yeah. So I think there's some really interesting topics there. The first of all, though, I think the industry, we can copy from traditional financial worlds to borrow the regulations here. But there are some small differences which are subtle but very important. In traditional industries, it's very complex. It's almost 100% of banks run on fractional reserves. So people, when you read the Bloomberg article, when they talk about reserves, they look at the total US dollar value for the reserves and whether that covers your asset. That's a wrong way to do it. You don't look at the total US dollar value. You just got a 100% reserve for each asset that your users hold with you. You don't convert. You don't look at total US dollar value. So traditional banks run on fractional reserves. In crypto exchanges should never do that. So that's something that we don't want to borrow from traditional finance, etc. So I think we want to borrow quite a lot of the transparency audit aspect of it, KYC, AML, etc. Regulations need to be adapted for this industry. Today, too many regulators are still of too much of the TradFi mindset. They actually need to get more of a crypto mindset. So I think communication, education, both ways is very important. Speaking of, you mentioned US regulations. US is actually one of the most advanced support for crypto exchanges in terms of banking services. In the US, there's an ACH protocol. Users authorize once. The exchanges can deduct money from the user's bank accounts every month automatically. This actually caused some problems in the case of FTX. Even after when they're down, their systems were trying to take money from users' banks through the ACH protocol. But the level of integration is actually very, very good in the US. Whereas in most other parts of the world, we're still trying to play catch-up on that front. US is more limited in product offerings like futures, earned products, etc. But at the same time, if we look at US, one of the most well-regulated markets in the world, Madoff happened. Yeah. Madoff is 10 times bigger than FTX, right? So, so that shows like regulation doesn't prevent scammers or fraudsters. So it just reduces it. So we can borrow from it, but we can't just say, look, regulation is going to fix all of this. It will reduce it. It's important, but we got to have the right expectations. And also, lastly, you mentioned that as industry players, what do we do? We have a number of initiatives that we're doing. In addition to us just being more transparent as a single business, we're trying to do at least two things. We're forming the industry recovery fund. Well, actually, I got a lot of interest from over the last couple of days for people that want to contribute, and also for people who need help. So over the next couple of weeks or so, we'll try to hash everything out and try to push that out. So we want the strong industry players today to protect other good industry players that may just be hurt short term. So that's not to say we can save everybody. If a project is mismanaged on multiple fronts, then we won't be able to help them anyway. The other thing we're trying to do is we want to form a global industry association for industry players, exchanges, wallets, blockchain developers, etc. When we talk to multiple regulators all around the world, the consistent feedback we get is there's no common voice for the industry. They talk to 10 different players, they all say different things. And they all act differently, they all do things differently. So I think having and then the industry players, we got to talk to 200 regulators all around the world. Having an association that establishes some best practices is actually helpful on both sides. So that's something else we're doing. This is something that we were planning even a few months back. But now, given what's happened, we want to accelerate this and sort of do this. So I think the industry got to come together, become tighter, and become better. So short term, there's a lot of pain. Long term, it's actually causing us to accelerate many of the efforts we're doing to make this industry healthier.
Yeah, I want to re-highlight this idea that exchanges shouldn't be fractional reserve banks, yeah. Right? If I deposit my money on an exchange, it's my money. Yeah. And if you read the contract at FTX or the contract at any exchanges, they didn't really have the right to take that and lend it to their sister company. That was sociopathic, fraudulent behavior, and costs all of us confidence. And so you'll say loud and clear, Binance has $1 for every dollar. Yep. Good to know. Good to know.
So there's an old technology called Merkle trees. It basically says, look, for your account balance, it generates a hash, and then you can combine hashes up into a tree onto one hash. There's a way to verify that your hash is included in the root hash, and this way you know that the total number is your account balance is included in a total number, and there's a way to verify that technically. So the technology has been there. I've done this in 2014 for an exchange back then. The industry somehow stopped doing this, so now we're bringing this back. So now you can, once we implement it, I think it will take another week or so. Every user on Binance will be able to verify that that premise is there. Actually, a couple other exchanges have been doing this, but we want to make this more of an industry-wide thing. Yeah.
So let me pivot the conversation a little bit. You chose to relocate your global headquarters here to the Emirates. Why and how's that experience been?
So yeah, this is the we have the largest team in the UAE globally. So we have about 600 people in UAE, and actually yesterday we were granted the custody license and also the what do you call it? Fund management license. Sorry, I wasn't sure if the right terminology. So we got granted 2 licenses yesterday here from Abu Dhabi. So everything here moves faster, and they're very strict, but they're very they embrace innovation. They understand that as much as this place produces oil, we cannot rely on oil forever, and you got to build new industries. And what's the best new industry to build is the fintech industry. And if you talk about fintech, blockchain is the technology that will power fintech in the future. So I think the leadership here is extremely aware and extremely smart about the strategies. And also, everything's very efficient here. So doing things here are just faster than in most other countries. So I just gave you the example of, if your passport is expired, you go to the airport. Here, if you're a UAE citizen, they say wait for 10 minutes and they give you a new passport. Whereas in most other countries, they'll send you back home and you have to spend another month or 2 weeks to get your new passport. So everything happens faster here. So it's a great place to be in. Yeah.
And your wife and kids, they like it?
Yeah, they like it, yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Let me ask you another question. You were born in Canada, modest roots, and now you're kind of a global superstar with 7 million Twitter followers. What's that like?
It's a bit surreal, to be very honest. I was a programmer to begin with, so I still think of myself as a tech geek kind of guy. Having followers and stuff like that, it's a bit surreal for me. But I try to keep it down to earth. I just try to be myself. I try not to let it get to my head.
When you look at the last, you bought Bitcoin in 2014, so literally it's this meteoric rise in 8 years. You built the biggest crypto company on the planet and the most profitable. Talk about the biggest mistake you made.
I think, especially given what's originally, I would have said, we probably could have moved a little bit faster or a little bit more aggressive, but given what happened last week, I think that might not have been a good idea. So I think prudent risk management and sort of doing things step by step is actually more important. I think my lesson is really, so I got into crypto in middle 2013. I started buying Bitcoin in reasonable sizes beginning of 2014. And then I joined a different crypto exchange, left, joined a wallet company for a while, and then I did my own technology startup for 2 years before I started Binance. So there was 4 years in crypto that I was not part of Binance, and then over the last 5 years or so, I was doing Binance. I think my philosophy is just do things in the most basic, most simple, and most effective way. So just cut out all the other, what we call fancy stuff, right? All this fluff, just cut it out. Just focus on building a very strong product, very good service, customer support, and make sure that your system's secure, your system runs well. And that's and also in our industry, it's for Binance at least, we have a third thing which I think actually helped us to rise to the top, is we protect users. We don't just talk about it. It's like 2 words, it's very simple. But we make decisions at each step of the way that we protect you, and the users know. So this is why the users stick with us. We have very loyal communities. Even like a year and a half ago, Binance was getting regulatory warnings here and there. Our market share grown. Users didn't leave us because of that, because they trust us. And now, a year and a half later, we have 15 global crypto exchange licenses all around the world, plus the 2 yesterday that we just got. So we're the most licensed entity on the planet now, and the users are still with us. So I think just protecting users is really, really important. So so for us, it's very simple. There's no magical pills, and we just slowly and steadily build. And I think for the industry as well, we kind of heard in the last week or so, actually the last year or so, but the technology is not going away. The strong players will actually have more opportunities to do more things. So that's kind of how we view it. Yeah.
So the first time I met you, we were on a Zoom, and I was asking about your business strategy, and you said something like, I don't go first. I look at what someone else is having success with, and then I go after that business model with vigor. I'm a great copier. I'm a great second place guy because we can execute better than anyone else. Has that stayed the philosophy in some ways?
By and large, yes. So my meaning is not we never go first. On some stuff we do go first and we try new things. But by and large, going first, there's a very high chance of failure, right? So when you're innovating, you're probably going to fail 90+% of the time. But when somebody else invents something and that's already trending, we got to be able to catch on. So our ability is not so much like we're smarter, we can predict the future, we're super innovative. We're more the execution guys. So we're very strong on execution. When something's trending, then we can copy and we can execute better. We can execute more quickly, lower cost, higher capacity, more secure. On any of those matrices, we got to do at least better on a few of them. And if we can do that, then we have the user base, we have the brand, we have the user trust, and then so we just got to be able to execute. So this happened a couple of times. When DeFi was all the rage, BNB Chain started. BNB Chain now has the most active daily users. Not the highest TVL yet, but it's the lowest fees, relatively high capacity. And when NFTs was all the rage, we launched an NFT platform. It's still actually behind. It's still actually second largest NFT platform. But NFTs have dropped quite a bit in volume. But we're not the first exchange by far. But we try to execute better than everybody else. It's on every little thing. We're more secure. Our match engine is faster. Our customer support. We handled 250,000 customer increase last week. Average pickup time was 18 seconds. So you contact our customer support, 18 seconds, there's somebody chatting with you. So we try to do all of those things a little bit better, and that's why we're here, yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
A few more questions. So just to kind of get the broad scope of what Binance does, you have a venture business where you started making venture investments a while ago with a pretty unique philosophy. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So as we just discussed earlier, over the last 3-4 years, our venture arm invested, the first 3 years we invested about 100 projects. We invested about $130 million US, roughly, because the value changes all the time. The portfolio value for that 100 projects now worth about $7 billion US, even at today's market value. So it did like about 60x something. So that turned out to be done really well. Over the last year, we actually sped that up. Over the last year, we invested in another like 60, 70 projects. The ticket size is a little bit bigger now. So in the bear markets, we actually are much more aggressive. We see there's more opportunities, better opportunities. But the point that you were asking before was we just hold the coins. We almost never sell. So Luna, we invested $3 million US. At peak market value, it went to 1.6 billion, and then it dropped probably to about $3,000 now. But we still hold it. So why do we do that? I don't want our team to get into a position of where we pick tops and try to sell every 2 years. Like, what are we going to sell today? If we have that kind of mentality, then everything we hold is going to be short term. I want to hold for like 10, 20 years. And then so we already have projects that's done 1,000x. So we only need one project to do 200x to cover the cost of the rest. So our cost is covered. Even losing theoretically $1.6 billion on the book. And we still hold a bag of FTT, which was worth like a couple $100 million like a week ago. But it's okay. we were going to sell it. So that's one of the very few ones we're going to sell, and we said we're going to sell it. But now we still hold a large portion of it, and we stopped selling. And even yesterday, my team was like, do we want to sell the rest at the market value? It was like, well, let's just hang on to it, because there may be investigations later on. Let's just hang on to it. So we're not selling. But for the rest of the portfolio, we don't want to sell just by picking top. I want to hold for 10 years. There will be a few that will do 1 million X. And that few will make up for the rest of the portfolio. So that's kind of our philosophy.
So I assume when you started, you were part of making those decisions on which projects to invest in and not. Now that you've got such a big empire and you've got a dedicated venture team, do you still get personally involved in where to put money?
I'm involved very, very little. So we still have a process called an investment committee. I'm sure you like IC, where the smaller projects, like I think below like $3 million, I don't get involved. If the investment is more than $3 million, I will be invited to the IC. It will be a project whose name I've never heard of, most likely. It will be like the technology I never heard of. So I'm relying on like 2 pieces of paper. Like I try to ask them to condense down to like a 2-pager for investment IC memo. And honestly, I wouldn't know very much about that project. So, and if the team, I may ask 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll have a vote. But if the majority of the team says we're going to go for it, I usually just yield. So I try not to make those decisions. But I'm still involved in some of the slightly larger ticket size projects. And this is also the reason where when people come to me to pitch projects, you're an investor, you listen to pitches. I don't listen to pitches because I'm not smart enough to judge whether a project is good or not based on an elevator pitch on 30 seconds. And for me to understand a project, I need to look at the white paper, download the products, use it, follow the project team, get involved in the community. That takes me like, months. I unfortunately don't have the time to do that. So pitching projects to me doesn't work. I won't remember them.
You guys all heard that, no pitching. So I want to keep going through Binance because I think it's fascinating, the scale of the empire. And I also, there's often a lot of what we call FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, jealousy around any successful project. And so let's talk now about your blockchain. The BSC chain is now the 3rd largest blockchain?
Depending on how you count it. It's like 2nd or 3rd or 4th, depending on different metrics. Yeah.
Got it. The naysayers always said, well, it's just CZ, he owns all the nodes. Yeah. And that's not true. So why don't you explain?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question and giving me the chance to clarify that. So there's a misconception that BNB chain, the BNB Smart Chain is all the validators are owned by us or indirectly by us. We actually specifically try to help famous projects teams in the ecosystem to run different nodes. So EtherScan runs one of the BNB chain nodes. And most of them can be attributed to very nameable projects in the space. I don't have a list of all the names in my head. I actually don't pay a lot of attention to that. Binance runs 2 nodes. Out of the 27, 28 now, it's going to grow to about 41. So we just run 2 nodes. And so that's all it is. And we're very happy with that. We give grants to developers to write code for it. There's no equity involved. It's a blockchain. Nobody owns it. The developers, I talk to a couple of the sort of senior developers once in a while, and now they're talking a language I hardly even understand. I think Vitalik's very good in this. He's still very technical. I used to be a programmer, but I think now I'm a terrible programmer. So they work on stuff on their own. Sometimes, once in a while, they ask me like, "Hey, CZ, what do you think? Like, is privacy the future, or is other things the future?" I'm like, just at those levels, I'll say, "Hey, higher capacity is better." I only get involved with very they chat with me like once a quarter or something like that, and I only chat with 1 or 2 of them, and that's it. That's our influence. But for us, I think it's very important for us to be the contributor, especially financially, resource-wise, also liquidity-wise. We're just a contributor to the BNB ecosystem. And for me, BNB is my baby, but it's grown up. It's already out there. It's in college. It's already doing its own thing. He probably has his own girlfriend and boyfriends or whatever. So we're just helping. Yeah.
All right, we're getting towards the end. So one of the things that was very disconcerting with the FTX exchange is that if you went to the Bahamas, you'd walk 15 feet away from where FTX's offices were, and Alameda's offices were there, and they were giant market makers on the same exchange. And so now that's got everybody worried about market making on your exchange. You do market make some on Binance. Can you talk a little bit about the market makers from your company on the Binance exchange?
Sure. That's also a great question to clarify. So on Binance, we rely. There are many market makers on our platform, and most of the institutions do market making. They put the orders up for retail guys to trade against, and most of them don't have relationships with us. We do have one market maker that I'm a shareholder of. It's actually registered. Now actually registered in Bahrain, licensed in Bahrain. We look at the books. We make sure that that entity does not make money. So it's there to provide liquidity. We also try to make sure it does not lose money. So liquidity providers should not lose money. So if it's a very simple algorithm. It's like the guys who understand DeFi, right? So you place orders on the books, both sells and buys. If you lose money, you try to spread it out a bit. So now you're buying at you're selling at this price, trying to buy at this price. If whoever wants to trade against you, that's great. If you start to make money, you try to narrow it. So now you provide a tighter book. If you're really, really tight, most likely you're going to lose money. So by just adjusting how tight the spread we're providing, and then when we do this, other market makers come in. They have better market making algorithms. Today, 90+% of the 95% of the market maker volumes are other market makers. This one entity we kept just because actually Alameda used to do a lot of market making on our platform. They have been reducing over time, but they still use our liquidity, so they have to put orders on. When our order books. When a large market maker goes away, so ours is the market maker of last resort. So it's very transparent. It's one company that I'm a shareholder of. It's registered in Bahrain. The books are audited. We don't make money. We don't lose money. So that's the best way to keep it.
Awesome. All right. So last question. You are the CEO of an awesome, well-run business that is at the center of a giant industry. You're also now an ambassador, a senior statesman for an entire industry. And those things are both aligned and it's sometimes in conflict. How do you manage that in your head or think about it or meditate on it about allegiance to the overall industry and allegiance to Binance?
I think it's a fairly simple mental exercise. I think today, what's good for the industry is good for Binance. So for Binance today, given our size in the industry, if we take market share away from a smaller competitor, it may increase our volume by 1%. It's not that meaningful. Whereas if we can help grow the industry by 10x, 100x, 1,000x, which I think is totally possible, then our size grows together with that, because our growth has been pretty much consistent with the industry. So from that point of view, I spend a lot more time talking with head of states, politicians, regulators, trying to grow the industry. So that's actually more helpful for Binance as far as my efforts are concerned. I don't spend that much time on the day-to-day operations of Binance anymore. We have a very strong team. I fly around all the time. I was in Indonesia yesterday, landed last night, and here now. So our team runs all of that. There's always somewhat conflict of interest potentially. For even within the Binance ecosystem, on Binance.com, we list probably a lot of different blockchains, right? We support different coins. That's on the centralized exchange. BNB chain lists on multiple centralized exchanges. They list on Binance and a bunch of other exchanges. CoinMarketCap works with many different exchanges at the same time. Our wallet, Trust Wallet, works with multiple blockchains as well. For Binance.com, if there's only one blockchain, there's not going to be much volume on Binance.com. So it's actually better to have a very diverse, lively ecosystem. So it's important to have a lively ecosystem. Do they compete? Yes, they do compete. Exchanges compete with exchanges. Blockchains have some competition with other blockchains. Wallets compete with other wallets. And for players in the Binance ecosystem, we do try to give a little bit more help, both branding-wise, liquidity, etc. But at the same time, we invest in projects on different blockchains. We invested in Polygon, Matic. We invested in almost most of the projects in the space actually. So from that perspective, overall, we try to grow the industry. I think the industry still, also given the industry has about 100,000x room to grow, especially from where we see today. It's not a saturated market. We don't need to compete within this 1% today. We can grow 100x, and everybody benefits. So we actually very rarely even use the word competitor internally. Internally, we use industry peer. To say, look, the mindset is we're not competing with other exchanges or we're not competing with other businesses. So even little words internally, we're quite careful about it. So so we hope to grow the industry together.
So I said that was last question, but I got one more, and I'll get you off the stage. Everyone in crypto, in the decentralized revolution, had a moment that they said, I want to actually spend the next 10 years, 15, 20 years of my life working in this industry because part of it is I'm good at what I do and I can make money and I'm a computer guy. But what was the because? Like, why crypto? Why the decentralized revolution?
Yeah, so for me, this is like the second half of 2013. So I got introduced to Bitcoin in July 2013. And the person at the time told me, look, he said, CZ, you should consider converting 10% of your net worth into Bitcoin. There's a small chance you will go to zero, then you lose 10%. There's a much higher chance you will 10x, and then you double your net worth. So like, well, that's pretty serious. So I looked into it, and I read the white paper, understood there was much less educational material back then. I understood the technology. I was always tech finance, so I kind of got it pretty quickly. And then I went all in. I didn't just go 10%. There was 6 months later, like in December 2013, I was like, this technology works. I need to make sure there's a community. So I went to a conference in Las Vegas, and that was like a Bitcoin conference with like maybe 150 people. But it's the same crew that you see today. Vitalik was there, Matt Rozek was there. This is the same crew. I said, if this is the, at that time, when you read the news, it's all about the Silk Roads. It's all about drug lords using Bitcoin. But when you meet that people in that conference, it's a bunch of young kids. It's a bunch of geeks. I'm like, if this is the community, I'm very confident. So this is why in early 2004, right after that conference, I told my boss, look, either we do something in crypto or in Bitcoin industry, or I'm leaving. So I left. And then in 2014, I was selling my apartment, buying Bitcoin. For me, the realization was, I missed the internet thing because I was kind of just got out of college. I wasn't able to latch onto it. Internet was a new technology for transferring information. This is a new technology for transferring value, right? So comparing information to money, this thing's going to have a much higher impact. And I'm not like, at the time, I was like 35 or so. I was like, look, I'm not going to be, the next chance is going to be 20 years later. I'm not going to miss this. So this is why I quit my job, sold my apartment, bought Bitcoin, and started looking for a new job. And then I spent like 3 or 4 years in the crypto industry before I came back to my old job, which is building trading systems. So that's kind of how I got started. But for me, it was very clear. And this is now 8-9 years ago. So for me, it's coming to the period where like I'm like 10 years, almost 9 to 10 years into the industry. So we got very lucky, Binance built a very strong platform, and also an ecosystem. So going forward, I'm actually going to plan to spend more and more of my time on the industry and less of my time on Binance, the centralized exchange.
Awesome. Well, guys, CZ, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Appreciate it.